Okay. So first of all, a little bit about our membership. We currently have, the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group has 1,325 members. Obviously, we don't get that many members at every meeting, but we do have that many people that have been to our meetings at one point in time. Membership is free. You can register at www.rmnsug.org. When you register, that ensures that you get notification of upcoming meetings and events, if we have events, which we will hopefully in the future at some point. You also get access to our LinkedIn forum. You do have to be a member to get to our LinkedIn forum. We keep that locked down so it doesn't get spammy, so it's just basically our members. As a member, you also get a $400 discount to SuiteWorld. And then CPE credits are available for members as well. We do have 2 CPE credits available today. If you are not a member, please sign up. We actually can't really stop that, but please register to be a member if you are going to claim the CPE credits. So for membership, you also get access to our LinkedIn user group. The purpose of the group is to support each other with questions and answers. We follow up with questions and answers from these meetings, and then that's also where we will make our announcements, our presentations, when our presentations and notes are available, when the discount to SuiteWorld is available, and then also we use that to post job openings. So you or your company can post job openings, or if you are looking for a NetSuite related position, you can also post on there. So where to find us? You can find us at www.rmnsug.org. And we also have a YouTube channel, which is where we post all of our videos. And you can go to YouTube and search RMNSUG, and it'll come up with our videos. And then our LinkedIn forum. You can search for Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group on LinkedIn, or you can go to that URL right there, and that'll take you right to our forum. I'd like to just take a moment to show you our website. Some people ask if we record the meetings, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we do record them, and we post them here on our website. There is a posts section. Once you go to that posts section, you can see all of the previous meetings that we've recorded, and we've been doing that for several years now, recording our meetings. You can search for a specific topic in the search bar over here. So let's say, for example, you want to find some information on saved searches. You can do a search there, and you can see all of the topics that we've posted based on saved searches, which is obviously very popular. We've done a lot of that over the years. So that's where you can find our previous meeting recordings. We also post all of our slide presentations. So if you go to a specific meeting, there's the recording, and then right underneath it, you can download the slides from the presenters from that meeting. Okay, I'm going to go back to this. All right. So member announcements, if you have any announcements, I would like you to please post them you can either post them in the chat window here right now, or you can go to our LinkedIn forum and post them there as well, or you can do both. And we'll keep on going. So just real quick, I'd like to recognize the board of directors. We are all volunteers for the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group, and we work behind the scenes to bring you these meetings and the content. We do 6 meetings a year, and then we also meet on the off months to make sure that we're planning well ahead so that we can get good content out to everybody. So I'm sorry, Dana, you posted. Oh, Dana, looks like you put. Yeah, there you go. And the CPE the keywords will be posted right before we start the main presentation. So first of all, that's me. I'm the president, Corey Anderson. We have Margie Cominos of PlantScan Corp. Mike Kackline, he's our communications chair from Vertifor. Our speaker chair is Peggy Evleth from RSM US. And then our presenter today is Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting. So thank you to the board again for everything that you do to keep this group running. Evaluations will be sent out to you today. So if you registered for the meeting, which you probably did because you're here, we will send you an evaluation. Please take a few moments to let us know how we're doing. We do read and act on feedback from the evaluations. One of the most important things for us is the topics that you would like to see. So if you have topics that you want to hear about in the future, there's a spot for you to put it in the evaluation, and we'll take that into account and put it in our ongoing list. Meeting sponsorship. So our meetings are sponsored by, our meetings are supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. The cost of the meetings is supported by our Suite app and consulting sponsors. Suite app sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com. Consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. So by presenting those 2 sponsorships to each meeting, we are trying to give everybody that's here an idea of the NetSuite ecosystem, the Suite apps that are out there, and then also companies that can help you in a consulting fashion. Our upcoming meetings, our next meeting in September is our inventory management meeting. This will be similar to the one that we did 2 years ago, but we're coming back around, and we'll have a little bit fresh, updated content on that meeting. And then for our November meeting, we have our roles, permissions, and centers. We have not done that meeting before, so I'm looking forward to that one. And then the meetings after that are still to be determined. CPE credits, so 2 CPE credits for today's meeting. Certificates will be issued within 15 days after training, after today. If you have problems with the CPE credits, you can email info@rmnsug.org, and the CPE credits are sponsored by Eide Bailly. This is a requirement for the CPE credits. I have to read this. So to receive CPE credit for attending today's session, you must sign in and out of the session using code words. The facilitator, that's me, will provide the first code word at the start of the session and then provide you a checkout code word once the session is complete. You can log in with your computer, click the link that was provided to you in the email that was sent on Monday evening. I'll also get the link and post it in the chat window here this morning. Fill out the information and enter in the check-in and check-out keywords. The second keyword will be given at the end of the main presentation. I'd like to say thank you today to our consulting sponsor, Luxent. And I think Luxent looks like posted, yeah, Reggie posted there is an Amazon gift card giveaway today. So make sure in the chat window you go to the link and you can register for the raffle. And Luxent will pick the winners there. Thank you for sponsoring Luxent, and everybody please make sure you go and sign up for the raffle. And then our other sponsor today is Versapay. Thank you very much for sponsoring Versapay. And so at this point, we're going to hear a few words from Lauren with Versapay. So I will stop sharing and I will give you sharing or presenting permissions, Lauren.
Perfect.
Oops. Sorry,
Perfect.
Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, you're there. All right, hang on just 1 second.
It looks like I can't share my screen. It needs me to be the presenter.
Yeah, I'm trying to get there real quick. Sorry about that.
Okay.
My my window of people went away.
No worries.
Margie or Dana, if you can grab that, I'm having a challenge finding that here. Oh, let's see. Maybe it's here. There it is. Okay. Okay, there we go.
Perfect. All right. So, hi everyone. It's nice to meet you all. I'm Lauren with Versapay, and I will actually be here to talk to you guys about our payment integration that we have with NetSuite. we provide payments inside of NetSuite, and I'll be able to show you some functionalities and features that we do have, with being a partner of NetSuite. Before I do get started, I do want to make sure that everybody knows that we are also doing an Amazon giveaway. So that'll be put in the chat. So if you do want to be entered for that, just make sure that you register, and then we'll give you a $150 Amazon gift card. Now, what I want to do is give you guys some background on what we do, who we are. So we've been in the industry since 2004, and we are a fully built for NetSuite partner. Being fully built for NetSuite really gives us the ability to have a full integration into NetSuite. So if you are looking to accept credit card or ACH payments, you will be using NetSuite for the entire piece of your transactions. You'll see as I go through this, we do have some functionality when it comes to invoicing and statements and storing credit card information, but just know that you will be using NetSuite for the entirety of all of the transactions that you do run. Now, with our integration as well, we also have the ability to work with the many different ways that you are looking to take payments. So we work with the retail side of things. We're actually the only provider today that can do devices. We branch out into the e-commerce side. So if you had a website, we can accommodate that. And then we also branch into just NetSuite ERP. So if you are taking phone orders, if you're sending out statements or sending out invoices, we have different ways that we can accommodate all of those different payments. Now, something else with our integration, we do reside on the new API of NetSuite. So any enhancements or updates that are done, we can automatically push those out to you. So every couple of weeks, we are adding enhancements and updates to our integration, and we fully handle our integration. So if you do see something out there that you're interested in and you're signed up with us, then we're happy to push that out to you. Now, also with our integration, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we do branch into all of the different products that NetSuite has when it comes to e-commerce and also the retail space. So we work with the different website products. They have SuiteCommerce, SuiteCommerce Advanced, and then we branch into some external shopping carts like Magento, Shopify, WooCommerce. So we try to make sure that we can accommodate, even if you're not using a NetSuite product. We want to make sure that we can help you guys get your payments inside of NetSuite, even if you're not using one of their core products. Now, a few things to keep in mind with our integration. We do want to make sure that you guys have a full system here that will help with fraud, that will help with manual processes, and also help out with fees. So when it comes to fraud, this is really going to be on the e-commerce space. But if you are someone who's having issues with chargebacks or fraudulent transactions on your website, we do have different ways that we can set on the back end to help alleviate those transactions. We also branch into a third party that we work with that will help guarantee any fraudulent transactions, so it takes the liability off of you. So if you are someone who's having issues with fraud, we have different tools that we can help out with on that. Also reducing manual processes. Again, we're a fully built for NetSuite partner, so we want to make sure that you guys are using one system, you have one-stop shop for everything. We will handle the entire integration for you guys when it comes to our piece. We'll also do a training with you, make sure you're comfortable with how to use it. And then we also want to make sure that you and your team know how to use the entire system for reconciling and reporting. So we try to make sure that you guys are comfortable with our implementation and that you're also comfortable with how to use it. We also can achieve what's called level 2 and level 3 processing. And this is something that we'll do when we do provide a quote to you. And if you're not familiar with interchange, we can dive deeper into that if we do schedule a call with you, but there are different ways so we can help out with interchange management and help lower your credit card processing fees. And then lastly, driving incremental sales. We want to make sure that you guys and your team are able to process payments as easy as possible and make it easy for your customers to pay you. So, there's different tools that we have, which I'll show you now. So the first thing that we have is called e-invoice. And this is going to allow you to send out an invoice to a customer with a payment link. The nice thing with this is the customer does not have to have a login or remember a username and password to make a payment on a single invoice. So what you'll do in NetSuite is you'll create an invoice inside of NetSuite. You'll email that to the customer, and then the customer will get taken to a payment screen. They can enter in their credit card information or ACH information. We also have the ability to do surcharging on these forms. So once the customer does fill out all of their payment information, it does come back into NetSuite and marks that invoice paid in full. So even though the customer is using our advanced feature for invoicing and using payment links, you're still able to have that fully integrated and marked paid in full inside of NetSuite. Another way that you can utilize that same functionality is by sending a statement. So if you have someone who has multiple open invoices with you and they want to make a payment on multiple invoices, but with one payment method, you can send them a statement. They can mark to pay 5 out of 10 invoices, and then all of those invoices that they choose to pay do get marked paid in full inside of NetSuite as well. With these two features, anytime a customer is making a payment, whether it's credit card or ACH, that payment information can automatically be stored inside of NetSuite on the customer record. So anytime that is stored, it's also stored as a token. So you guys are able to use that payment information. If you do need to do one-offs where they call in, you have that payment information on file already. And then lastly, I just want to touch on, if you guys are interested in seeing a demo, we're happy to do a full demo for you. And then we also will provide a proposal for you. So typically what we do is we ask for a copy of a merchant statement from who you're using today, and then we can do a true side-by-side comparison. That way you guys know bottom line, what were my total fees with who I'm with today versus who I'm with or what I'm using with Versapay. So if anybody's interested, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to provide a demo for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you again, Versapay, thank you for sponsoring. I'll go ahead and take back the screen share. So real quick, we have a little bit of time, so I'm going to open it up for member announcements. If anybody would like to make an announcement, you are welcome to unmute yourself and go ahead and speak. We'll have a few minutes available for this. So if anybody has an announcement, and right now I'm also going to post the CPE check-in link in the window, and I'll put the check-in code up on the screen here in just a moment.
Hi, this is Margie Caminos, and I just want to let you know that this is also a time, like if you have a position open at your company and you're looking for someone, or if you're looking for a position, you can also talk about it then. Or if there's something you want to make sure that's covered in the accounting or hope gets covered, you can either post that or announce that. What I wanted to tell you all about today is to share that let you know that there are other user group meetings also that you can attend. I've been attending the Ontario user group meeting. I think they just meet 4 times a year, and I found tremendous value. So if you're looking for methods of sort of learning more about NetSuite, or finding out some cool things that were aha moments or aspects of NetSuite that you didn't know about, you might consider looking at other user group meetings too. So the Ontario user group meeting, you can just Google Ontario NetSuite user group meeting and find it. And if you're a member, they also record their meetings. And I'm kind of doing a shout out for them because they're having a real challenge in connecting with other potential NetSuite users that are interested. They, I think because they're in Canada, they don't have NetSuite is not able to send out invites and such. So to get on their list, find out if there's something interesting that you might want to attend one of their meetings, I sort of recommend that. That's all. Just want to put a shout out for that. Thanks.
Torko.
Thank you, Margie. Hang on just a moment here. Okay, so if anybody else would like to unmute themselves and make an announcement, I will read the chat window from Janice, looking for a NetSuite consultant for reporting, customizing, and troubleshooting. Referrals are appreciated. So you can reply to Janice either directly in the chat or on LinkedIn if you'd like. Does anybody else have any announcements? Okay, going once. You can also post it in the chat window throughout the meeting if you think of something later. All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on then. So there is our CPE check-in code. It is summer. And with that, I'm going to stop presenting and turn it over to Dana Larson.
Great, thanks, Corey. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the summer. I'm scared, it seems like it's going really fast. Okay, can you see my screen? Trying to.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, all right. I'll try to monitor the chat as we go today, but I think Corey and Margie and Mike, if you guys are seeing it, let me know.
Yep.
I am Dana Larson on the board, as you saw. I typically do the accounting spotlight. We do that once a year. This month we went a little later in the month, hopefully to accommodate everyone closing, and hopefully you're all closed by the 21st of the month. I'll be talking about, this is the agenda for today, the date versus period reporting, account registers, journal entries, advanced journal entries, intercompany ones, amortization schedules, and then just going through some financial reporting, the standard ones, how to customize those, and then also the customizing the layouts of them. And so we'll probably take a break right before the reporting part, but we'll just watch the clock. I'm hoping to break right about maybe 9:45 or 10, just to give you an idea. Okay, I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I sent it to Corey. He'll be posting it on the website where you saw it. But I don't want to flip back and forth today because I find that very distracting. And so what I'm going to do is just stick in NetSuite. We're going to be moving through everything in here, but what I'm covering is in the PowerPoint. So feel free to download that later, and it'll have some screenshots and notes and things like that. But I thought it'd be a better use of our time today to just go right into NetSuite. I do love questions along the way, even though this is kind of an awkward environment for that. So do use the chat for that, and someone will interrupt me, and we'll try to answer your questions as we go. As you know, when you're doing Zoom or GoToMeeting, it's really hard to see people's faces to know if you're connecting. And so if there's, it would be good if you ask questions, because then we can take care of it as we go. And then at the end, I'll leave some time. So I'll try to pause. I'm not very good about that, so I forget. All right, so our first thing, we're going to talk about date versus period reporting. And the reason I talk about this up front is it's a really important concept that when you first start using NetSuite, people aren't familiar with it, especially if you're coming from QuickBooks, where there's really only one date that's used in all of your reporting. In NetSuite, there are two dates on the transactions. One is a posting period, one is a date, and they don't have to match. And it's important to know how you're looking at your data if you're using one versus the other. So to find out what you're looking at, you go into your set preferences, so home, set preferences, and then in the analytics tab here is report by period, okay? So you can do all reports, financials only, or never. What you want to make sure is that you're conscious of what you have it set at, and maybe your teammates, you talk about it to make sure that when you're reviewing reports, you're looking at them the same way. If I run a balance sheet and I run it by period, I might get a different answer than if I run it by date. And a good example of that would be if I go to enter a rent bill. Let's say I have a vendor bill and I put it in on June 30th, but it's really for July rent, or maybe I even put it in June 15th, but it's meant to be in the July period for reporting purposes. So I can put June 15th in so that my my due date calculates, and you know that the vendor bill is properly set up with the right date. But I could put July as the period that I want that to post in. You don't have to do all those accruals then. You can just put it in with the right period date. But if I were to run about an income statement and see my rent expense, it would be different if it was date versus period. So I typically have this set to financials only. So what you'll see when you do an income statement now is that on the bottom, you'll notice that you have periods showing down here instead of dates. Now, sometimes it makes sense to go change that if you wanted to see just a specific day. Let's say you have a lot of transactions and you click in here and you're looking at January and you say, well, I really just want to see the 2nd of July, but you'll notice down here you can't filter for that. So you just have to go back and change your preferences to never, that you don't want to report by period. And then you're able to see, you can go with just a date down below. And then just review that specific date, and then you can always flip it back. The one time I think of it as really important to change to never is when you're doing a bank rec and you reconcile your bank always by day, because the bank, everything's by day, not by period for a bank rec. And then you know how you see your statement balance at the end of your bank statement, your reconciliation report will show your ledger balance. That ledger balance is not based on period, it's based on date. And so to show your auditors that you've properly reconciled, it's good to go back, change your setting to never, that you want to do it by day, and then run a balance sheet through the last day of your statement so that you show that the bank balance matches your statement balance. Does that make sense? Does everyone, any questions on that right off the bat? I do see a question about where can we download the presentation. I don't think that it's been posted yet, but it'll come up soon when the video is posted. Yeah, Margie answered. All right, so there is a question. For payables and vendor bill entry, if we use the date of the invoice that is in one period, but we're already in the next period, NetSuite will not let us use the invoice date since it's out of the, yes, that's a setting change. So in your enable features, if you go up to setup manager, and then I'm gonna look at period, it's gotta be in the accounting section here. There is a, here it is, allow transaction date outside of posting period. So that is a setting where if you say that you allow it, then you can do it. It'll let you. You can also put on a warn or disallow. And so in some cases, companies don't want the period to be different than the date. And if you don't allow it, then everything I just said is a moot point. It doesn't matter. But most of my clients do want to allow it, because then you don't have to do those accruals like we talked about. And so you can set it to warn. And I typically do that because then when I have a mismatch between the date and the period, it warns me and says, hey, is this really what you want to do? And you say yes, and then it saves it for you. When you do have this turned on, there's also at the end of the month, during the month-end close, it gives you an opportunity to review all of your transactions that have a date period mismatch. This is especially helpful in January when you flipped your year forward and it's very easy to do mismatches then if you haven't closed your prior periods, because then it'll flip to January of the prior year. You can have some trouble with that. So it is good during the period, the month end close, to go ahead and review that. Let's see. I wanted to see if there's any other questions when right, the AP aging is also one of those reports that typically uses the date, not the period. And so if you were to go in and reset this to set preferences and say analytics never, because then you're going to get everything by date. And then if you run your balance sheet, you should then be able to compare it to your AR aging, and it'll match exactly. Let's see. You guys are doing great with questions today. We've had issues where the fiscal period of an invoice does not match the fiscal period it's actually being posted in. Is that a setting that would cause that? Also, our NetSuite does not allow the AP user to change the posting period when entering. Okay, yes, so both of those are settings. There's a setting on the permission that says, are they allowed to update the posting period? And so if they have not been allowed to do that, it's automatically going to set the period to the date that they put in, which may not be right. So I'm not a big fan of locking people out of the posting period, because as I said, you would then need to do an accrual for it. Now, an accounting manager maybe who has the permission could come along behind that person and change the date. But if you ask me, that's double work, and it's pushing the responsibility up the chain when that person might not know what period it should be in. So I would recommend changing making it so that that posting period is available. It's in it's in your roles and permissions. And then there should not be that first part of your question there, Beth, that the invoice, if there's a period on the invoice, it will post to that period when you run a report. So I'm not really sure. There is no difference. Like, it's not like it swaps over. So I'm not sure what you're seeing in that, but that should not be an issue. All right, any last questions on the date versus period? It is a huge issue if you don't understand it, especially if you've got two people working together, they have it set differently. You get calls, the NetSuite's broken, our balance sheets don't match. My first question is always, are you reporting by date or by period? All right, I'm going to move on. Our next thing we're going to talk about is account registers. There's many ways to get into looking at the details behind an account. I often go in to the balance sheet or the income statement, and I just drill in, and then I look at, okay, what activity happened in here? And there's good and bad things about that, because looks like we just have one transaction here. You see them all, and you can properly roll up and down on the report. It's a good way to do it, but sometimes it makes more sense to go to the register. I meant to show you this when we were in the set preferences. If you are in charge of a particular bank account and you would like to use the show register, there is a setting right here that says default bank account. And so this is your bank account that you care about. When I'm in the set preferences screen, I'm only looking at my own preferences. Okay, this is not globally, this is just for you. And so if you say operating account US, now you can go to reports, banking and budgeting right here and say bank register. That bank register that it goes to is controlled by that setting over here. Okay, so now I'm in the bank register for this account. And notice that because I said I wanted to report never, I'm seeing it down here by date. Okay, this bank register is a little bit different. It's I think it's a little less functional than the other one, but this is one way to do it where you can get in and easily see the ins and outs of your account. The other way that I prefer is to go into your list of accounts. I went into lists, accounting accounts. And when you're looking at your chart of accounts, you can edit the account itself over here or view it. But if you click on the name, it takes you to the register of that account. And this is true not just for bank accounts, but any account that you're working with, you can go look at a register. Now, right now I have it clicked to one line. Do you see this box down here? So I'm only seeing the side that hit the bank, okay? The actual account I'm looking at looks a lot like that last report we just saw. Yes, I'll get to your question, Rochelle. So then if we click on if we unclick that, then you'll see the split. So you'll see two lines for every line, and you see, let's let it render. Actually, I've got it set pretty wide here. You can see, okay, that was a payment. The other side went to accounts receivable, and you can still see the amount. Now, to your question, I hope this answers your question. You let me know. This tells you if it's been cleared or not. Now, remember, this is kind of the older way to do it. I see very few clients using this clear box anymore. But once you have reconciled the item, it will show up checked as in cleared. If it's on a reconciliation, obviously I'm in a weird test environment. We haven't been reconciling anything. If it were part of a reconciliation, what I love is it shows you which date it was reconciled right here. So it actually has that date. Now these have not been reconciled. So if I were to click on them, it's gonna take me to the old bank rec module, which most people aren't using anymore because that's being deprecated. But I do like that you can see what month bank rec it got reconciled in. All right. The other thing is you can also find things. You can search for things here. Notice that if I say 5,800, I'm looking for a transaction with 5,800. It doesn't find it. And here it is right here. That's because it needs the comma. It's a very literal search. So keep that in mind. Okay. And it'll jump through them. One thing I wanted to show you that I've discovered is I'm going to come down here. There's a number. Let's see. I've got a number that's toward the bottom. Okay, I'm going to look for 12375, but I'm going to go all the way back up here, and I'm going to use the Control F because I use Control F a lot, just the browser search, and I'm going to look for 12375. It doesn't find it. And I think it's because it's so many pages down, it's only looking at the screen that you're looking at. And I do believe it goes a little further. Someone probably knows this better than me, but I've found it's not as reliable. But if I do it down here and search, it does find it. And so this is a little more functional for that. One other question is here you can say, show me only my uncleared transactions. That's another way for you to see what hasn't been cleared in an account. And please, this is just a side note, keep in mind that when you reconcile a bank account and it has a bunch of uncleared activity that's really old, you're not really reconciling your account, you're reconciling to the bank statement, but you do need to clean up the ones that are out there that are just lingering. And so don't forget to look at what's been unreconciled in the account and make sure that those are properly cleared out. So if you have a check that hasn't been cashed and it was 3 years old, it's probably not going to be cashed. So you need to either void that check or do a journal entry that clears that out. Okay, so you can also sort this different ways. So amounts by document number, order, cleared status. So there's lots you can do in the register. Like I said, I don't really spend a lot of time here, but occasionally it's really helpful, especially when I want to find a very specific dollar amount in a register when the Control F using the browser search isn't very effective. All right, let me see if I had anything else in my notes about this. Any questions on that before I move on?
Dina, real quick, I just want to mention that I put your slide deck on our website and I'm gonna post the URL for it real quick. So if anybody wants to go download it, they can right now. So I'll post that here in just a minute.
That's perfect. Thanks, Corey.
Yep.
Yeah, then you can flip through the slide deck if you want to while we're talking. I won't follow it exactly, but I do have my notes from it that I'm trying to follow along with. Okay. Anything else on the on registers? Next, I'm going to go to the chart of accounts for just a minute. The chart of accounts. First thing, when you first start with NetSuite, you'll notice that there's some accounts that don't have numbers. These are system-related accounts. And so if they are posting accounts, I will usually give them a number so that when you run a balance sheet or income statement, they show up in the right place. If they're not posting accounts, like open sales orders is one, that one I wouldn't bother giving, and I wouldn't bother giving a number to it because it's actually never going to show up on a report. It's NetSuite uses it as a holding tank sort of for different things that are going on, but it's not a posting account. When you're looking at your chart, you'll notice that anything that's a bank account or a credit card account, if you have multi-subsidiaries, it has to belong to one sub only. So if you've got a bank account, it lives in one subsidiary at a time, and that's because those are separate balance sheets. They are fully contained. There's always a debit and credit that balances, and so they have to belong to one. One trick when you're adding your chart, adding new accounts, is you have to get the account type right when you save it. Even if you don't have any activity in it, you can't change the account type once it's been saved. It would be easy right now. Notice this one is, it tells me that I can delete it just by checking this box. That means that it doesn't have any activity yet. You can always change accounts, but even so, if I go in and edit it, I'm not going to be able to change the type. The type is locked down. Now, one thing I can do is I can merge accounts, and you can merge accounts as long as they're in the same bank type. So it's only going to bring me other bank accounts right now that I could merge into. So that's helpful though if you've changed your accounting, and let's say you closed an account and it's been years and you just want your cash to all show up together, you can do it that way. So you can merge. A couple other things about the bank accounts. Let's say later you want to move an account from one type to another. It's not as easy as it sounds. And what you're trying to do then is make the total show up in a different section of your financial statement. So let's say it used to be other income, and now you want it to be a regular income account, for example. You can create a new account that's in the right place, and then do month-over-month balances that move the dollar amounts from the old account into the new one, and then close the new one. Or you can just inactivate the old one so that you now start using the new one, but historically it won't follow along. So the system's pretty unforgiving when it comes to the types. And so I have in the past moved balances so that it is in the right place. You can even go into each transaction and move it if you haven't had it going for long, but you will have to physically move those transactions or create new journal entries to move the balance over. Let's see. Instead of merging, I've also had clients move one as a sub account of another account so that they make it a sub account and then they make it inactive. Now that works if it's the same type, but you don't want to merge. You can make it a sub account, make it inactive, because then historically its total will tie in with its header account, but you're basically saying, I don't want to use this anymore. You can limit your accounts to say which subsidiaries it can be used in, which is helpful if, let's say, you have an expense account that's really only applicable to a couple subsidiaries, not all of them. You can use your control key and highlight those. But typically, I'll just pick the highest level one especially for P&L accounts, and then say include children. This is helpful if you add subsidiaries later, because then because you check the include children, it's going to include those in there. You can also, here is the magic, use match bank data and reconcile account statement pages. Get a lot of questions about this one. And I'm imagining this is going to go away soon, but this is what tells the system to use the new way of reconciling. So if I don't check this box, if I go into transactions, bank, reconcile bank statement, the old way, you'll notice, I think it'll have the deprecation alert that says, yeah, this is no longer the way that you're doing bank recs. But notice it will show up in this list because I don't have that box checked. So anything that doesn't have the box checked will show up here. But I won't be able to use the new way, which is the match bank data, import banking history. All of these use the new way. And so if I check this box, it'll no longer show up in the drop down of the old way, and it'll only be the new way. And Corey's going to talk about this at the end in the tips and tricks, how to use the new way even if you're not importing your bank data, which is a really good tip. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this has to do with currency conversions. There's one other thing in the income statement. If I were to go in this accounting, I'm going to do a new account because there was one more, right? Oop, it just went away because I have it on bank. I'm going to put it to an expense account. Now you see this 1099 miscellaneous category come up. That's another thing that you can use to, at the end of the year, when you do your 1099s, if you want it to go into a particular box because of the expense account. So for example, rent expense, you might pick the rent box for your 1099. And so this is what helps you know as you're getting your reports out, which box it should show up in. And this is when you pay a contractor and hit this account, what box do you want it to show up in? And one more thing, this deferral account, we're going to talk about this in a minute for our amortization schedules. You can choose to use this or not, but if you do use this, what it means is, let's say this were a rent expense. In my deferral account, I might have prepaid rent as my deferral, okay? And what you're doing then is you're telling the system, when I hit rent expense and I set up an amortization, what account do you want me to collect that in for my amortization schedule? And it's gonna look to this account. And so it's important to know about that. Any questions on the chart of accounts? I'm looking at my notes. Yeah. Looking at yours. All right, I don't see anything on the chart. I'm going to go back and just glance at the list one more time to see if there was something I forgot on what you're doing here. And remember, this is where you edit the account or view the account setup. Clicking on this link always takes you to the register. Okay, let's move on to journal entries. There's a couple things. You can enable a feature to say that you want your journals to go through an approval process. And there is an approval process that's a real simple one that's set up in NetSuite where you basically say in a permission that someone has journal approval, or you can use workflows and create a more complicated approval structure for your journals. Let's go to lists. I'm sorry, transaction, financial, make journal entry list. And do you see how that was kind of a hard, like I had to go all the way to the bottom, and I don't know about you, but often my hand jumps off the thing. And then, so what I might do, if this is something I had to do every day, oh yeah, Matt is making a comment about the 1099s. Yeah, I highly recommend those yearly and Track 1099. Because they stopped doing the 1099 reporting inside NetSuite, it's best to use one of those. And then they have searches, and you can install the searches in with the bundles, and then you run the search, and it will give you the layout that you need to upload your 1099 information into one of these processors, and then they will actually send out your 1099s. I'll caution you, since you brought it up, Matt, I'll caution you that it's easy to have bad data that they're not going to know about. So for example, you'll want to check their search. Does it include journal entries? Let's say you were halfway through the year when you implemented NetSuite and you brought in some of your historic transactions as journals. You'll want to see, does that get included or not? Do you manually add those to the saved search, or can you change the saved search so that it properly pulls up everything? Also, if you have partial payments year over year, let's say you had a vendor who charged you $2,000 one year, you only paid them $1,000, and then the next year you paid them the next $1,000. You'll have to be careful that you're looking at the dates on the payments, not the dates on the bills. Also, if they charge you for two different things, one reimbursable, one 1099able, one not, you'll have to make sure that you know which year did you pay for the non-reimbursable versus reimbursable. So there are some things to look out for when you're doing your 1099s. My recommendation would be, don't ever split payments to your 1099able vendors, because that gets things more complicated at year end. So, but yeah, thanks Matt for bringing that up, because several years ago NetSuite kind of stopped their 1099 process. I think they were nervous because it's easy to get wrong. That's my opinion. They have not said that to me. Okay, so for journals, I was saying, how it was hard to get into this. So do remember that you can add shortcuts, and I do that a lot for things that I use frequently. So I'm gonna just save that as a shortcut now. So now I can get to it by going into, oh, it's not showing up there yet. If I look at my, actually I'll go here to my dashboard, and now if I go to my shortcuts in my dashboard, which frankly I don't even know if it's set up here, there it is. I have my journals list, and so now that would take me straight to my journals list. That was really just a sidelight on that. Now, here's the thing with journals. Right now, I'm looking at the whole list. I can sort them by date, put the most recent on top. One thing of note is that if you have this import permit number is a custom field that was created in this environment. Notice the pencil here, and we have our edit turned on. I could actually go and change this right here. This is only header data on the journal. I don't believe it's going to let you update line level data. This is a header level data that you're seeing with a pencil on it. And this is giving me one line per journal on this screen. Journals are weird because they're not like a normal transaction where you have header lines and main lines. They're all considered header lines on a journal. So it's just kind of a weird, you have to get used to it when you're doing your searches and things. So you can copy a journal. Let's go ahead and view one of these. Just if you're in view mode, you can make a copy. And what it does is it pulls up the exact same entry, but it changes the date to today's date. So you do want to be careful when you're copying that you update the date to the date you really want it to be posted on. You can also memorize a journal to have it recreated for you on a schedule. To do that, oh, that's created from an amortization schedule, so I don't think it's going to let me. Let me find a regular. Sadly, I think most of these are. when you're in edit mode, typically you can create them. This is dumb, I should have had one set up in advance. We'll do a new transaction. Okay, I'm seeing a couple questions. Let me answer those while I'm here. Can you add a filter to view the memo header title JE, not the line item memo field? Yes, you should be able to do that when you're in that journal view. If you edit your view and you could add that, and I believe, so what you'll do is you'll get doubles on it. But if I go into my results tab here and say, I think it would be memo main. And if we add that, so here's the memo for the line item and here's the memo for the main. And now I've added that to my view in this custom view. And now I'm going to, I'll just preview it in this case and we should see it over on the far right. And you can of course change your columns and how you're seeing them. So here's an example of one where you're seeing the header, not the, oh wait, I lied. It's over all the way to the right. There's the memo main. I'm not even sure. This is test, there's one. Okay, so on-site training, you'll see that. And if we come over here, let's see if it's pulling it up in both places. Let me view, I'm gonna view, oh, this is an expense report. Oh, when I got into my, when I said preview, it took me away from the journal list. So that's something that happens if you're not careful when you're updating it. So I'm gonna edit my view again. I'm gonna add that memo main. I'm going to move it up to put it by the other memo. And then I'm going to just say save. And then it should take me back now if I go to my journal list. Oh, Terry, to your question, you can make, this is just changing your view, but you can, you could save a list view like this and make it for everybody. And so an admin could make that a preferred view for everybody. But if you're messing around in there and doing that, it's just changing your view. And Jim, to your question, when you go to transactions, I'm not sure, you say accounting, do you mean financial? I'm looking at journals list. So, okay, if you're looking at this list, check your filters on the top. There's a little filter section. You might have a filter up there that's filtering it so that you're not seeing what you're intending to see. Make sure that it's showing you journals and that it doesn't have some type of filter that's filtering it out. So
Okay,
now you're
Dana,
seeing, yeah.
I'm also thinking if it's accounting and then journals and lists, that sounds like it might be a custom link.
Yeah, I was wondering about that link. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also you might be in a different center. I'm in the classic center, so my menu options may look different than yours. But it seems like we should be able to do like a page. Let's see. Is that what it's called? Journals. I'm trying to remember what it would be called. Maybe Corey, if you see that. Oh, okay, you did mean financial. Okay, yep.
Oh,
okay. And so you can take a look, Jim, and see if there's a filter that's causing that. But now you can see that the main memo is showing and the memo. And so it doesn't look like there is a main memo on this. So if I view this journal, actually, I'm going to just view it because my the bar for my GoToMeeting is in the way for me to look at these extra tabs. So now, if you look at the main memo, there's nothing there, but then down here, there's these memos too. So it's not a good example, but yes, that's when you see main, it's talking about this header part. And then the detailed lines are typically the detail lines, but with journals, it's just a little bit different. As I say it out loud, I'm trying to remember if they're all considered detailed lines are all considered header lines. It's one or the other. Now I can't remember which one, but it does make a difference when you're doing your reporting because you can't. So here's a really good example. If I'm doing an import and let's say I did some vendor bills and I had something wrong on them and I want to go in and update the lines, I can do a save search, export the lines of the bill. And if I get the line number when I export it, when I do an import, I can refer to the line number and say, just update this field, or, you can do these updates. When you're doing journal entries, you can't do that. You can't update the lines of a journal entry with the save search. You have to replace them. So let's say you did a bunch of journal entries and you were having problems, you wanted to go back and redo them, you would have to export all of the lines. And you could delete them, or you could export all of them, make your updates, and then when you do your import, you have to do the setting that says replace the sublist. It's in the advanced options of the import, because then it'll replace every line of the journal entry and it'll be fine. If you don't set that to replace, it'll add the lines that you're bringing in. So it can be really frustrating to try to fix journal entries after the fact, unlike I think the other transactions are much easier. So let me see here. This is where you would make a copy. Now, if I'm in edit mode, I think this one will let me make it recurring. So now I'm in edit mode and I say memorize. And then once I've memorized, it'll bring it up, very similar to QuickBooks. But there are just a few small differences, and I might not have this in the PowerPoint. I will go off topic occasionally, my apologies. Okay, so when you're setting this up, you give your memorized transaction a name. Now this template only means it's never gonna run unless you go out and run it. Otherwise, an automatic will go on its own. A reminder will tell you, hey, you've got a memorized transaction out there that you want to use. I think the reminder ones are good for ones that change every month. Let's say you have a bill that's not quite the same every month, but you want to remember to put it in. So you set it up as a reminder, and then you have that reminder on your dashboard. It'll say you have 3 memorized transactions to enter, and then you can go enter it, update it, make it right. Otherwise, if you say automatic, it's just going to run it and put it in every month. And so if you say automatic, then you tell it the next date, how often to repeat it, the time period, and then the number remaining or indefinite. And this is really powerful so that you don't have to keep doing the same transactions every month. You can set a lot of things up to be memorized. And I would highly recommend that you use these judiciously. So if it is something that's the same all the time, go ahead and make it automatic. But otherwise, those reminders can be really powerful. I'm going to read Julie's question. We have multiple subs. When we close or sell a sub, we mark it as inactive. However, in the drop-down of subs in NetSuite, it continues to display. Yes, okay, so that is a common issue. And the reason it does that is because you might be reporting historically, and that subsidiary does have activity. And so what I would recommend is change the subsidiary name to have an X in front of it. Then it'll drop it down to the bottom of the list of subsidiaries so it's not in your way. I know that's a hack, but it's the best way to get it out of the way. You can't, it's always going to be in your subsidiary list if it has activity. Does that answer your question, Julie? Sounds like we've got someone not muted. Peggy, can you mute, please? Okay, great. Now I'm scrolling down. Oh, the reminder action. No, it won't just be the person who created it. it will be, it'll show up for anybody. So to your question, David. And then Karen, is there a way to associate a vendor or customer with a journal entry? Yes. And so back on that journal, there is a name field, and it's right here. This can be a vendor or a customer. Hey, Corey, do you want to manually mute wherever that's coming from?
Yeah, I was going to mute all, but I didn't want to mute you while you were talking. Let me just mute all real quick, and then you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Great. Thanks, Corey. So right here, if you put their name in right here, either, and this could be a customer, a vendor, an employee, whatever you put here, what's nice about it now is if I go and look at that record, and I look at their transactions, this is going to show up. And I would say when you're importing like historical transactions, let's say you're importing vendor bills or something and you're doing it as journal entries, only put the name on the AP side of the entry, not on both sides. Otherwise, when you're looking at the vendor record, you're going to see 2 lines for every transaction because it's actually coming out here and looking at every row. So hopefully that helps. All right, did I answer all the questions on that? Trying to think what else. You can print a journal entry. Let's see if it was, I'm going to do cancel and see if it'll just pull it back up. So when you print it, you can print it that way, or you can print the GL impact of a journal entry. You can also see the GL impact. I think it's kind of funny to look at the GL impact of a journal entry because it's the same as what you're seeing on the main screen, but that GL impact is really helpful everywhere in NetSuite. You can go look at the GL impact, and what's especially helpful is to see all of these segments and make sure, did it, you know, how did it do my segments? So if you're looking at a vendor bill, then you can see the header of the vendor bill hitting AP, and then you can see all the detail lines and how it's going to show up. And now you can print it. That it didn't used to be here, so this was kind of a nice, I don't know when they added this, but it is a nice feature because sometimes people need to. I'm not a big advocate of printing journal entries and putting them in a file somewhere. I like the fact that NetSuite is cloud-based and you don't have to have a lot of paper and filing a lot of things, but if an auditor did ask for like a printed copy or something, this is what you have. Now this does not show you, in this case, it doesn't show you the classifications like the department that we just saw. However, I'm wondering, I'm never really played with this, but I bet you could change this form to include what you wanted to include. Janet asked, if you create a memorized journal that is automatic, does it still route for approval if we have an approval workflow? I think that's a really good question. I think that you can make that a yes or a no if the memorized transaction has been approved when you memorize it. It might let it push through without approval, but I'm not sure on that. I believe in your approval routing, you could manage it to say, if this is from a memorized transaction, it's automatically approved. Because if it were me, I wouldn't want to look at the same journal every month and approve it. I would want those to go through automatically. So I'm sure there's a way to do that where you could make your approval routing let it go through. But if you wanted it to go through an approval process, I believe there's a way to do that too. I'm just not positive. It kind of depends on what approval routing you're using. If you're using the basic NetSuite, the one that's essentially using permissions, or if you're using a workflow to do it, so you've actually set up a workflow to push it through, then it would be different. All right, any other questions on what we've covered so far? I'll talk briefly about statistical journals. So in NetSuite, there you go and look at your chart of accounts, you can actually filter it and say, show me my statistical accounts. And these are special accounts that you can use for things that aren't dollars. And so we've done a demo on this in the past, and I think we used this NetSuite instance. And so we did headcount. And so you can use dynamic allocations on statistics. And so if you find in your job that you have to do allocations every month, and maybe it's based on square footage or head count or something like that, go ahead and set up statistical accounts so that you can put in the square footage that month by department and then run an allocation later to look at that department's square footage, and you say, I've got X amount in utilities, go ahead and allocate that out by square footage. And I know I'm going over this really quickly, but I want you to know that it's possible. And so if you need to do it, you can read about the statistical ledger. These do not have to be balanced. They don't have to have debits and credits. You can just put in a number. It can be an absolute value, or it can actually be a delta value every month. So I can say I added 2 more people, or you could say, nope, now my head count is 100. You know, you could do it either way, and then you can run your allocations against them. We're probably not going to get into allocations today, but it is a topic very similar to amortizations, where it can make your life a lot easier if you set things up in the way to make them work as automated as possible. There's a lot of automation available using statistical ledgers and allocations. So, all right, advanced intercompany journal entries. They are there used to be something called intercompany journal entries, and now that's being deprecated and they're using advanced. I, to be honest, didn't even recognize what the difference was. I didn't pay attention when they were making this change. So I'm going to pull up an intercompany journal entry. It's typically, you get to it off of the financial make advanced intercompany journal entry list. So it's just like journal entries. There's really nothing special about them except that you can have multiple subsidiaries on the same journal, which is super helpful if you're doing intercompany transactions and you want them both to show up on the same journal so that you're properly documenting what happened. Okay, why do we have this transaction that's creating a due to, due from, and you're putting it together so it's easily auditable. You put your backup in one journal entry. It's all beautiful. And so the one trick with these is whatever subsidiary you put right here, it doesn't really matter except that it needs to be the same as this subsidiary here. And it'll automatically fill it in when you go to enter an advanced journal entry, advanced intercompany. But if you're importing them, that can make the import bounce out if your mainline subsidiary doesn't match the first row subsidiary. So keep that in mind. Then what happens on an intercompany is that each subsidiary that you list right here has to have a balanced entry. They don't have to all have the same number of rows or anything like that, but it does have to have debits and credits have to tie out per subsidiary, okay? And then now you don't have to. I could have had a $50 here in the other sub, and that would have been fine. As far as NetSuite is concerned, because it's saying, okay, this happened in this sub, this happened in this one. But when I would save this journal entry, it would give me an error to say, did you know that your numbers aren't the same per sub? It's not a $100 entry per sub. And you could say, yep, that's fine, I know it, I don't care. But if it were, in this case, because we're hitting this due to intercompany clearing account, you would want those to be the same so that you're always clearing out that intercompany clearing across the organization. So in this case, what I've done is I've said, I accidentally paid for something out of the US West subsidiary that I billed to automobile expense initially. Now I want to make that, I want to charge that to US East. I want it off my books in US West, and I want it on the books in US East. And so I credited it out of automobile expense, and I hit my due to, due from, my intercompany clearing for 100. And then I debited it, I charged it to the East subsidiary, and then I put it into the clearing account. Now, what's nice about this is if I were to run a balance sheet across all of my subsidiaries, this 100 would clear against this 100, and my intercompany clearing account would automatically eliminate, because it would show, oh, I've got an in and an out and they match. And so you could easily see, do all my ins and outs match, and you would know that you're in good shape for your intercompanies. Often people will have an intercompany clearing that says basically it lives in US West, and it'll say for US East. US East owes me this much money. And then when you do it that way, they don't clear each other out, but you do have a really good audit trail of who owes whom money. If you never settle and you just kind of keep track of everything in between companies, then I think an intercompany clearing account works really well, because it automatically eliminates and shows up really nicely on your balance sheet. For different currency intercompanies, if you turn on elimination, it takes the currency variance to the gain loss account. Okay, that sounds right, that it would book it appropriately. We probably won't get into currencies and eliminations and all that today, just because it's a super, it's a crazy topic, frankly. But thank you, Patty, you're right. And also, you know, maybe that would be a topic we could cover in a potpourri someday, where we cover multiple topics. But currencies are weird. Okay, you stated that the balance sheet account numbers need to be different across subsidiaries, but the JE is used. Okay, I said that the bank accounts and credit cards need to have one account per subsidiary, but not your other accounts. So Kenneth, to your question, so the intercompany clearing account can be the same number, because that's not a bank account or a credit card account. And so these can be cross subsidiary. Does that answer your question? Great. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do the do to, do froms. So the point of this was you could then attach in your communication, I could attach the backup for this particular transaction right here and attach it. And what's nice about that is then you have closed the loop on, I now have one transaction that affects multiple subsidiaries. It balances within each subsidiary. So it's just like, this is just like two journal entries, one in US West and one in US East, but it ties them together, and then the backup is on the one transaction. And so when someone comes to look at this transaction, they can better tell the story of what happened. Oh, I see what happened here. I was moving it from US West to East. Where if you did this in two separate transactions, it would be harder for someone to understand, why did this journal entry happen? All right, any other questions or any questions on advanced intercompany? I probably need to go just a little bit faster. So best practices for journals. Don't use a journal if you can use a standard transaction. It'll be better for the audit. If you use a bill when it's a bill, and you use a invoice when it's an invoice, journals always are flagged during an audit, and you have to, and then we already talked about attaching the documentation you use to create the journal. That always comes in handy. Always use an intercompany when it involves two subs, so it's together. And the user notes area is a good place for any other types of details about this transaction. You can enter a new note here and type a little novel about why you put that in there. I always think, oh, I'll remember later, and then I never remember. So I'm always glad when I have notes on that. Okay, so we're going to run through, in the next 10 minutes, we're going to get through the amortizations, and then after the break, we'll talk about reporting. All right, so amortizations, you can set them up on vendor bills, on vendor credits, journal entries. You can set these up to run automatically, so that at the end of the month, you say, run my amortizations. And for those of you who might not know, an amortization, and a good example is I pay my NetSuite licensing once a year, but I don't want it to hit in 1 month and spike my income statement with that expense. So I'm going to put it in, but I'm going to put it in as a prepaid and then have it divide out over 12 months and hit my income statement and expense that item out. And so that's what we use amortizations for. In NetSuite, you do have to enable the feature under the accounting feature under enable features. You have to turn on, and then you turn on your future periods, because if I'm going to amortize, let's say for 3 years, I need to have 3 years of periods open into the future in order for me to do this. And you'll run into that problem, especially if someone's not always opening periods out into the future, or if you get something that you have to amortize over 5 years, you may have to ask someone to set up those periods, which is very easy to do. Just set up accounting, set up a full year, and it'll be out there. But it's something that you have to do before you try to set up your amortizations. One best practice to note is if you're doing, let's say you do a vendor bill and you set up an amortization. Someone just asked how to set it up. So it's in Company Enable Features under the Accounting tab, and then it's right, Amortization, allow creation of amortization schedules. So normally I would just go to Setup and click on it and then type in the word amortization and it would bring me there. But that's how you turn them on. Once you turn them on, you come up with a list then in the accounting dropdown of amortization templates and schedules. So templates is where we'll start. I was going to say that your best practice is if you use amortizations and you have a vendor bill, and let's say you enter it and you set up the amortization schedule, and then a vendor credit comes along for that bill, it's better to go just amortize the vendor credit instead of trying to go back and fixing the original vendor bill. Go ahead and add the vendor credit and amortize that so that it does the credit side of it. It's just an easier audit trail of what you're doing. So with your amortization templates, I'm just going to click on the new one to show you what they look like. You give it a name. The name is important because that's what's going to show up when you're doing a vendor bill to know which one to pick. And what's interesting about this is you can dictate the entire transaction from here if you want, or you can dictate almost nothing. So for example, I set up 2 of them where the most important thing is to say, what's your amortization schedule? Is it straight line by even, or does it have a proration on the first and last period, and or straight line using exact days? And so you're allowed to pick one of those. But beyond that, you can leave everything else blank if you want, because you can dictate the rest of this in the transaction. So my point in bringing that up is you may want some amortization templates that are wide open, that just say this is a standard straight line. But you might want some that are more, that say things like, this is a 12-month amortization, or I want it to hit this account. And so let me show you my list of amortization schedules to show you what I mean. I've got this straight line one, and it's, let's see. This is looking at a schedule, not a template. Just a second. List, accounting, amortization templates. So I have a straight line one where all I did was I said, use the straight line by even periods. I didn't tell it how long or where to put it, okay? Then I have another one that I said, this is prepaid expenses 1 year straight line. On that one, I told it, it's a 12-month amortization. I want my contra account to go to prepaid expenses. But my source account is going to be off the transaction. I'm sorry, that's the term source is off of that. So then I have another one where I actually tell it for fixed assets computers. let's see, can we change amortization period after it starts for a specific template? I do think there's a way to do that, Ram. I don't know, I'd have to look at the exact instructions, but if you went to support and then you typed it in, go to Suite Answers, and you type that in, you could get the specific way to do that. It's not easy. You may want to stop the amortization schedule and start a new one with the new number. Do you need to set up the prepaid accounts as type deferred expense to be able to? No, you don't have to. They can be anything. The prepaid accounts are actually asset accounts, right? Because they're sitting on your balance sheet as an asset. If I pay in advance, it becomes an asset and then it gets expensed out to the expense account. So my prepaid accounts are typically asset accounts, but you can use, I believe you can use deferred expense too, now that I'm thinking about that. But it doesn't matter, you can set that up to be what you want. So this fixed asset computer one, this one I think is fascinating because I have told it to use the deferral account of 1301 IT equipment, use the contra account of 1351, and the target account of depreciation expense. So I've said for 3 years. So in this case, I've told it everything to do on this. I've told it, I'm actually overriding the account that it goes into. And I have an example of this one because I think it's fascinating that it doesn't matter what you put in on the bill. So I'm going to go to this vendor, ACOM, and I have 3 different bills for them that I set up using the 3 different amortization schedules. Okay, so here they are. This is the one that I think is really interesting. When you look at the bill itself in view mode, when we get there, you'll notice that I'm in the AP department. I just went ahead and I set it up. I said, well, we bought a computer. That sounds like office expense, but I want an amortization schedule on it. So I picked the the computer equipment amortization schedule when I pulled that down, and then it automatically filled in my start and end dates. And it brought in a residual too, because I had that on the template. But what's interesting about this, if you go to look at the GL impact, look how it moved it into the IT equipment. And then it also changed, because that's what I had on my template. If you look at the amortization schedule, it also, I'm going to look at the first journal for the 731 that I ran. It dictated where it put the contra, right, into accumulated depreciation and the depreciation expense. So now you're seeing, let's see, is that the right one? I think it's this one. Yeah, ACOM, it was this one. So it's using that same template for that first one as well. But it actually took all 3 accounts that it needed off of the amortization template. Nowhere is it hitting office expense, which is what the vendor bill hit when they put it in. But it's because they picked the amortization schedule that dictated it. So if you don't set up that deferral account, remember, flashback to the beginning when we were looking at the accounts, and there was that deferral expense account that was on the setup of the account. If you don't fill that in, then you definitely want to fill it in your amortization schedule, so you tell it where to go. And what that allows you to do then is you don't have to fill it in on the account itself. If you fill it in on the amortization schedule, then you don't have to have it on the account. So your question, Lindsay, of would you need a template for each amortization schedule you want? No, you need one for every combination of accounts and maybe periods if you put in the length of time. But if you could get away with just one, because you could use this one right here If I look at my template that was just the straight line one, if you said, I just want a straight line amortization and everything else is going to be dictated by my transaction, if you use that, then you don't have to, you just need one template, because when you enter your bill, you'll say your start and end dates of your amortization, and you'll, on the account itself, you're going to hit the expense account, and it's going to go look at that expense account and say, what prepaid account should I use? So you can use as few or as many as you want. So Terry's asking, what if they're pulled in from Divvy or Stamply? How would you go about selecting the amortization feature? You may have to have, I'm more familiar with Stamply, where they could pull in a list of amortization templates into Stamply, and I'm sure Divvy would do this too. No, I'm not sure, but I hope. And then you pick the amortization schedule you want, and in that case, you would want to have enough information so that it would know what to do. So for example, in your amortization template, you might want to say, is it 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, so that you don't have to put that into Divvy or Stamply. It's part of the amortization template. So David, we have categories on our bill, but JE does not have category. So when there's an amortization schedule, does it mean the amortization portion will not be grouped to a category? Well, your categories point to accounts. So I think you can still, and you say the JE doesn't have, oh, the JE will have an account. Categories point to accounts, and so it should be fine, because your bill, if you pick the amortization template that points it to the right account, or if the category you select is pointed to an expense account that's pointed to a deferred account like prepaid, then it should work. So you should still be able to do it if you're using categories versus accounts. And so what he's talking about is, I'm going to go back to that bill. Actually, I think it was this other one. I'm going to go to the one that uses the very general. Okay, I had a one, I think it's this one. Yeah, so you'll notice on this one, I picked the amortization schedule when I filled it in. Oh, I did prepaid expenses 1 year, so it knew that it was going to do 12 periods, so it went ahead and it filled in the time for me on this one. But the other one I did not. It was straight from I guess I'm just trying to make the point that you can do as much or as little with the amortization template. So for example, if I look at the GL impact of this, it knows to go to prepaid expenses on this one, even though if you look at the expenses and items, I'm hitting the rent expense. Because my rent expense in my account setup is pointed to the prepaid account, I did not have to have that in my amortization schedule. Now, to your question, David, if you had a category and you selected a category, it would pull in the right account right here. You may have the accounts hidden in your vendor bill, but the account is in the background and it knows which one to use, and then it'll create the amortization schedule. And now real quickly, because I want to leave enough time for our financials, the reporting section, you would go into transactions, financial, create amortization journal entries is how you run them at the end of the month. One thing I would do if I were you is I would always include prior periods, because I've noticed if people skip them, they'll stay out there. Oh, to your question, yes, so I am showing you how to run it each month, and then if you have the fixed asset module, you would not use amortization schedules for your fixed assets. The depreciation is taken care of a completely different way. Thank you for bringing that up, because I'm only showing you that fixed asset one only use that if you don't have the fixed assets module. It is, if you don't have that many fixed assets and it's not that complicated, you can set up your amortization schedules to cover it. But the fixed asset module is very powerful and it'll run all of that for you. So yeah, you can ignore it for fixed assets. So now this is how you would run it. If I say include prior periods here, notice that I have some that didn't run for April, May, and June, and you would want to know that. And so if you come in here, I would always have that box checked, because I had a client recently that missed a couple months and they didn't know it because the box isn't checked and it's not going to show them to you. Now, if these periods are closed, it's going to go ahead and book all of these into July if that's my first open period. You have to pick by subsidiary. You can then filter by what type of transaction you want or not, but I'm going to go ahead and change my posting period to August, and then now you see the ones that I had just created. Now it's going to run their August, so it'll run them all at once. You can select individual schedules, or so I could say I only want to run these two, or you could run them all together by saying mark all, and then it goes out and creates them. Okay. Again, these are all filters up here. They don't change what's happening, but they change what you see in the bottom of the screen. And you do have to do it by subsidiary, which is a little bit, can be time consuming, because if you've got 20 subsidiaries, you'll have to go through and run it for each one of them. Any questions before we take a break? And my apologies for going a little long on that. All right, let's take about a 10-minute break. We'll come back about, okay, it's time for more accounting fun. For any of you who can hang in there a little bit longer, you know, it's always a challenge, I think, on Zoom to stay focused, but I did want to follow up. I did double check, and I said earlier about the journal entries. They are all considered header transaction. So when, you know how you have this little star when you're doing a save search to say if it's the detailed lines or the header, if you run a search across journal entries, they all come across as headers. So that was just a follow-up to what we were talking about before. Okay, so we're Adrian, I'll try to answer after we after I finish this section. I know we had a little private chat going on there. I just wanted to say I'm not ignoring you, but I'll get back to it. Okay, so we're going to talk about the standard financial reports and just some of the nuances to that. So I'm going to go in to my favorite. I'm going to start with an income statement. And apologies if you're not in a environment with subsidiaries. I do want to talk about this because it is, what is going on? Oh, I'm going to change this to all time. I was thinking, why do I not have very much data in there? Okay, remember I changed this to date instead of period. And so that's why you're getting the dates down at the bottom, and then I'll have to put refresh to get that to happen. Okay, so a couple of things right off the bat. When you're looking at an income statement in the subsidiary context column, note that it has your whole hierarchy, but you'll see that it has the consolidated versus just the headquarters. And so if I were to select just headquarters, it's only going to give me what's been booked directly into that sub, where if I do consolidated, it'll do that sub and all of its children. Okay, so you want to make sure when you're picking, what are you trying to look at, just the Americas sub, or do you want to see the Americas and its children, right? Also of note is that it's going to put it in the currency of the context that you select. So if I pick Canada right here, it's going to pick Canadian dollar, and it's going to show it to me that way. But if I pick Americas consolidated, and then if I put in my columns, if I put subsidiaries, you'll see that it will show it in US dollars, even though it was probably booked in other currencies. It's going to go ahead and show it to you in US dollars. It will never show you different currencies across columns, just so you know. It doesn't like that. It doesn't know how to do that. It's always going to be one currency as you look at a report. You can also, in your columns, if I go back and I do consolidated, in your columns, you can do subsidiary or hierarchy. If you do hierarchy, you're going to get a total for every branch of the way that they roll up. This can be really helpful. I always think it's a little hard to read in here, but if I were to take this out to Excel, and then if I put borders on these header rows, it makes it much easier to read, because then you'll see that, oh, the Americas is across here. This total, it blocks it out better for you to read. So if I'm trying to give this report to someone, often I'll do that. I'll create the borders around these headers. What's hard about this, though, is that you get all these subtotals. So here's a subtotal for the Americas, for ANZ, Asia, EMEA. But if you don't want all the subtotals, that's when you run it by subsidiary. So yes, you can do your income statement based on a defined class. We had a question, so I'll show you how to do that. This is so this just runs them all. So this can be really helpful if you just want a flat file. So you want every subsidiary with activity, but you don't want to see how they subtotal up. So that's the difference there. So to your question, you can click this little more or less button down here and further filter what you're looking at. So I can say I want all of my classes, or you can say I want these 2 classes. I use my control key, or I can use my shift key, and I want these 4. And so then you can set it up, and when you say okay, then it's only going to show you those classes. And then of course you can also put classes across the top, and same thing, either by hierarchy or not. And now you can see that I have filtered for system integration, training support, and admin, and now I'm getting those columns. And so you can then of course flip this back and say all. And the tricky part, though, is if I had left those classes selected as just a few of them, the next time I run this report, when I come in, it's going to be collapsed, and I'm not going to see that. And I'm going to look at this report and think, well, this can't be right. You know, we did better than that. And then, but it's because it's still selected up here. So it's a sticky setting. The next time you get into the report, it's going to remember it. So make sure that you're paying attention to this more or less, so that you know what's been filtered. And again, these are the filters that are set up on the basic ones, but you can add new filters, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Just a couple other things on these reports. If we added a custom field to our transactions, can we add that as a column to the top of the income statement as you did with class? No, if it's a field, you cannot, it's not going to show up as a column. If it's a segment, a custom segment, then it should. And so that would, Glenn, to your question, that would dictate whether you set something up as a field with just a list behind it, or if you add a custom segment. And so in that case, I would recommend creating a segment, and that's under the setup, customization, list records fields, custom segment, new, and then it'll act just like class or department. Okay, so down here, these are some interesting things down here. If you click on the up arrow, it'll collapse your whole report, and then as you click the down arrow, it expands it one level at a time. This can be really helpful if all I care about is income. I can collapse it all, and then I can say, let's just take a look at my income section and see what's going on there. You can also change your the expand level. So let's say you always wanted it to show at a certain level. You could select that. That's also inside the report. You can do that. And whether or not you want to display the title. If I display the title, now I see it up here. Sometimes that's helpful. I don't like it usually because it uses up so much real estate in my screen that I don't want to see that. You can of course export to Excel, PDF, CSV, or Word. You can email print it, excuse me, or email it to somebody or schedule it. So this little button here schedules the report. So I could say I wanted to send this income statement out to certain recipients, and you can give it a time, and as an attachment, this would be if you're attaching a different file to this. Here you tell it the sending format. Do you want it to be attached as one of these or inline HTML, which can be super helpful if you've got people who don't have access to NetSuite, but you want them to get reports out of NetSuite. You can go ahead and set up schedules to send them to them on whatever basis you want. Okay, so let's hop in and look at our customization options here. Whenever you're in a financial report, you get this edit layout, and we're going to come and look at that in a minute, because all the other reports that are not financial reports always have these options across the top. So we're going to talk about them in terms of an income statement, but you can do these same things everywhere. So excuse me, 1 second. One thing I should say from the start, people often ask, when do you use a saved search and when do you use a report? And my answer is, how pretty do you want the report to be and what kind of subtotaling? When you get into saved searches, you're typically just going to see a flat file. You can't say, and I want you to subtotal at this level or this level, where the standard reports allow you to have a lot more control over the view. And you saw that roll up we did where we collapsed and expanded it. You can't do that with a straightforward saved search. So there are some new things, just as a sidelight under the analytics. You can do workbooks now that have a lot more functionality, almost like pivot tables and things like that. So it's really powerful. So if you get frustrated with the searches and reports and you're kind of database minded and you want to create new reports, check out the analytics tab. I'm not going to go into it today. We did a whole session on that if you want to look in our archives about analytics, but it's a new workbook that they're setting up, and they're adding new template workbooks all the time that are really helpful. So So today we're only talking about the standard, straightforward reporting in NetSuite. So when you come in here, you get to your edit column screen, you give it a name, and obviously it'll throw custom on the front of everything. So I'm just going to say test report for now. And then these are the columns that are showing up on your report right now. You can add new columns to this. So to your question earlier about adding a field as a column, the only way to get it to go column over column with your different options of the answers in that field would be to make it a segment. But if you want to just add the class, for example, you can come in here and select class. And then actually, I remember now we don't even have, okay, this is a common thing. You'll be looking for a field, you won't know where it is, but if you come down here, these plus sign ones, these are linked tables in the database. And so we went at this looking at the transactions, but transactions are linked to a whole bunch of tables in the database, and class is one of them. So now we're going to come down here and we're going to add the class name as a column. All I did was click on it and it put it over here. Now I could drag it over here. I could also group it with the previous. Well, I'm going to show it to you without grouping first so that we get the idea. And another thing, when you're looking for these fields, I could have said, search the fields, where's my class? And if I hit enter, it runs a search of all of the fields. And then it shows me all of the fields with the name class in them. But you can see it's a little bit overwhelming because there's so many of them. If it's a green circle, it has a C in there and it's a green circle, that means it's a custom field that you added to your instance. And you can hover over the name of it and see, oh, this down here in the help, this is from the financial dunning procedure. This is, so these look like a bundle, the bunning dundle. The Dunning bundle got added. But you can hover over each of these to see where it's getting this, and that sometimes helps. And then, of course, this class field is it has a red box, so that tells you it came in. It's not a custom field. So that's another way to do it. And then once you're done searching, if you click back on this add fields, you'll get back to this list. So these are your options for fields that you can add. Like I said, down at the bottom are the plus signs that help you find the fields within those records. So those are attached records. You open the plus sign, you can get to the various things. So let's preview this now and see if the class came in. I still have it set to go classes across the top. I'm going to change that. And I'm also going to check to make sure I'm not filtered. Okay, so I'm going to refresh it because that's silly to put them down the left and the top. Okay, so now I'm seeing my revenue, and then I'm seeing it by class. And so you're seeing it broken out, each account by class. Now, if I return to my customization, I could move that class and group it with the previous. Let's see what that does. And this is how you get more subtotals, okay? So now, see how it just moved it over to the left, and it has it kind of as a tuck-in as opposed to a separate column. That's what it's doing for you. So I can still do my collapsing. If I return to the customization, let's see what else I can do here. If I click on the class, so you can group or ungroup, you can change the name of your column. I might call this, instead of class, I might call it channel, whatever I want to call that. Now, the tricky part gets to the amount field. Let's say we wanted to have different amounts if we had different time frames that we wanted to look at. You know what? I think I need to change my preference to I'm going to do financials for the period setting, because I think it'll work better for what we're going to show here. Financials only, save. Now it won't take effect till I save this report. So let me go ahead and save it. And then I'll look at, oh, okay, we're getting just some commentary out there on the schedules. Will it email the people when you default where you're setting, when you set up email? Oh, I see. Yeah, if it'll, there's no option to select the date and various segment. So, okay, the question is about, if I schedule this report, is it going to set it up with the same filters that I have set in here? The one thing you'll want to do is be sure you use a period setting here, like last month or this month or last period. Don't hard code the from and the to, because then it won't be dynamic according to the month. And if you need it to be a very specific set of filters, go ahead and put them into the filter of the report, as opposed to on the face of the report changing it when you run it. Then, because otherwise you may have troubles with it changing it as you go. So we'll get to the filtering in a second, and we'll talk about that. So when I return to my customization and I look at my columns again, I wanted to show you how you could do several different amount fields. So if you go into your financial and you just pull that amount field again, now I have two of them. In the second one, I'm going to go down here and do an alternate period range type, and I'm going to say relative to the report date. The reason I do report date is if I run this on July 21st, I don't care what day I run it. I want it to be relative to the report date, not the date I run it. So I'm going to put my alternate as last fiscal year to period. Okay, and then on this one, I'm going to have, I want this one to be actually, I'm going to use my report date as what's on the face of the report. Okay, so let's save that and see what we get. And you will have to play with this some because it's not, it can be, yeah, so Terry, you said the same thing. You can do it on the report instead of, I'm not sure that I'm answering that right. Can you not do your preference by report instead of the overall preference setting? You would set up the report with the preferences you want. Oh, are you talking about the date period preference? That has to be overall. Sorry, Terry. Yeah, that's an overall setting, not by report. So that's has to be overall. You can flip it back and forth and it doesn't do anything, but it's an overall setting. So here I'm going to change this to this year to date. A note on this, you can filter these quick filters so that you don't see every option because there's so many. I'm going to go back to period though, and notice I had these other ones selected. So I'm going to say this fiscal year to period, January to July. And if I refresh, this is a really good example of when I get frustrated because I said January to July, and this amount field was referring to the date of the report. The report date always looks at the from date. And so we would have to monkey around with that to get the amount. What I love about this feature though, is that it tells you the exact dates that it's giving you in each column, so you know if you're getting the right dates. It doesn't make you guess, which I really like because I've monkeyed around with this on different occasions to get different dates. Instead, I'm just going to do last fiscal year, and in this one, I'm going to do this. Let's see if I save that. There's one other way. So now I'm going to get January to December, January to July. I could change this to July. That you do have to play around with it to get it exactly what you want. Worst case scenario, and I do say worst case because you would have to change it all the time, but worst case is you can do a custom one. Notice if I'm relative to report date, I don't get it. But if I say relative to today's date, I can come in here and select custom, and then I can make this date exactly what I want it to be. What if I only wanted it to be January and February of 2003? You know, you could actually pick hard-coded custom dates that would not move though when you change it to a new period. So be careful with it. But it is powerful, and it will help you if you're trying to do comparison reports. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say last fiscal year. Okay, the other thing on these is you can drop the decimals, which I typically do on when I'm trying to do reports. They're easier to read, especially if you have a lot of columns on them. You could also divide it by 1,000 if you wanted to. You can make your negatives red, add a grand total, do percentage of income column or percentage of expense column, and that'll actually add a column off to the right that gives you that percent. And so you do have some powerful things you can do here. You can change your labels so it doesn't just have to say amount. You could say this year. I did it in the wrong place down here, this year. So you can go crazy with that. Notice that there's a budget, a financial, and a budget and financial. So the budget fields are very limited. And so I usually go straight into the financial. And right now we didn't start at a budget to actual report, so I would never be trying to pull budget data. I'm just trying to pull financial data into this one. But okay, so I'm going to save that, and we're going to go look at the other, like the filters. So I'm going to return to customization. On the filters tab, this is where you get into if you wanted to hard code some things on the report. So notice right now it has the class, department, location, item, customer, and do you see how it says yes to show in the filter region? I could say no, and then I could hard code it. I would have to set the setting to what I want it to be. Let's say I wanted my, I'm going to say all. Of course, I say that, and then now I'm actually going to just get rid of it instead of trying to take it off the filter. So I don't want it to be filtered for items. But let's say I was creating a report for a certain department. I might go ahead and hard code that department in here, uncheck it so it doesn't show in the filter region. And then, and this is particularly helpful if you have reports that you want people to run that they either don't use NetSuite very much, or you don't want them to be able to edit anything on the report. You just want them to run the report. You can take things off the filter region. And then you can add new things like a custom field, like you were saying earlier. If you have a custom field that you want to have as a filter on the report, you can go ahead and pull that in. Try to think of a good one in here. I might say cleared. I only want to see cleared accounts, things like that. You can add it in here. And if so, notice that it doesn't check the box for show in the filter region when I first added it. So you come back in here and check the box. All right, any questions on that? All right, we can get into the sorting. Is using the fields, the same set of fields. You can say now in a financial report, it's not as it doesn't let you go crazy with the sorts. It's always going to do the financial sections first. But if you're doing a different type of report, like a customer report, you can go crazy with the sorts. Let's look at the more options. You can run it by cash basis or not, show zeros or not, which is helpful if you want to see it condensed so that you don't see accounts with zero balances. You can also say I only want to see activity only, which would further reduce that. Show on reports page means if I click on here, I meant to show this earlier, the whole reports, saved reports, you know, you can get, this can get crazy. This is where it's going to show. If you check this box, this test report will show there. But I wanted to show you another way to get into the reports is if you just click on the header. I'm gonna just click on the header because it goes behind that bar. I can't get to it. Okay, so now you see all of your reports. And so this is just like the drop down, right? Saved reports, except that it has them by various sections. So now you can say, what are my revenue reports? What are my forecast reports? And so this is an easier way if you've got a ton of reports. And then I always make something a favorite. If it's a report I run all the time, I'll add it to my favorites. So let's go back. I wanted to finish that more options section. If you want to show the currency or not, this is helpful because sometimes that currency can clutter up your page. So you may want to take that one off. This is nice, the expand level. If you run this report all the time and you want to always start it at a 2 so that it's summarized and then you can drill into it or uncollapse it, expand it, you can do that. This is really a good one, the drill down report. When you're in a standard income statement and you drill into it, it takes you to this income statement detail report. But let's say every time you drill into an income statement, you want to see an extra field. You can actually change your drill down report. So what you would do is, let's go back to our income statement. I'm just gonna do save and it'll run it. And then I think I changed something on it, didn't I? I'm gonna start, oh, I said cleared only. That's what I did. Okay, so now I'm gonna refresh that. If I were to click on this view detail, it's going to take me to the standard view detail, but I may decide that I want more something weird happened. I'm going to go start on the new report. Sorry. Actually, I'm going to use I'll go back to go back to an income statement. And then if you view the detail, let's say we view it on revenue, it's going in and it's looking at the name. What if I wanted an additional field on this? I'm going to add a column and I'm going to show the memo field. Or the description field is a good one. By the way, description and memo is often used interchangeably when you're looking for things. So keep that in mind if you can't find something that you want. Okay, so let's preview that. So now if I were to, so now I've got that detail in there. If I save this as my detail report and save it. Now, if I go into a standard income statement, and the reason this is helpful, just to give you some context, is if you always have to drill into a report and do some research and you find yourself adding the same columns or making the same changes every time, then you should save that and attach it to a report. So now I'm going to go to my income statement again. Sorry, this is my talking too much. All right, when I customize this report now, and if I go into the more options, I can change this to be let's go to my detail report. Now I do have to save this one, test with my detail, let's call it. And then, so now I'm going to save that report. And so now when I drill into it, it's going to give me it's going to take me to that detail report so that I don't have to redo that every time I go to do the drill in. I hope that's helpful. Now what I would do on my standard report then is I'd make that my shortcut, because it's not going to work on the standard financial report. If I go in now and run an income statement, the detail report's going to be the old one. I have to start with this report because that's where I pointed it to in the more options. That's where I pointed it. All right, my detail. So you've got your owner, and then this description is what's going to print on the top of the report. If you don't want that, you can just delete it in the description and it won't add that to the bottom of the header. Sometimes it's kind of tedious. There's a bunch of stuff that gets put up there that is ugly. A couple more things on this one before we go into the custom layout. Audience and access is important. Audience, if I don't check anything on here, it's not like a save search where you check the public box or not. I actually have to go in and say, if I want to share this with people, who am I sharing it with? You can share it with just roles, departments, subsidiaries, employees. I don't recommend employees, because what if someone leaves? Their new person that takes their job won't see it then. So I would recommend always using either groups, departments, or roles, something more generic. Groups, by the way, just as a side, you can set up groups of people. They can be dynamic under your lists, relationships, groups. And that's how you can do a lot of things in NetSuite, like set file cabinet restrictions by group, things like that. That's what those groups are. The other thing, so this audience still uses their permissions. So if they're not allowed to see payroll data, if you give them a report that has, say, payroll data that they could drill into, they're still not going to be able to see it. So this is safer, right? If you go to the Access tab, however, what you're doing is overriding their permissions and giving them access to a report and saying, that's okay, I've locked this report down enough. I know that they normally can't see this, but I locked it down and I'm going to go ahead and give it to them. So just be careful when you use the access versus the audience. They will not be able to see any reports you create unless in the audience you select something. The fastest way is just to say show all roles, right? Now everybody can see it, but you may not want to do that with the report that you created. All right, any questions on that before we get into the layout? I've got about 10 minutes and I want to just quickly show you what's possible. Okay, the layout can be very complicated or very simple depending on what you're trying to do. I'll talk about it in pretty general terms because I did a whole session on this maybe last year, the year before, and so you could go look back at our old recordings if you want to learn more about it. But layouts, if you think about when you have a certain report and you've set up certain columns in a report, you can do a file save as, and you can create many versions of that report. The layout changes the left side of the report, not the columns across the top. And you can actually share this layout that you create across multiple reports. So I'll start with an example. Let's say I wanted to show my income. Okay, so see how it sets it up with the sections that any normal financial income statement has. It's got your ordinary income and expense. Let's say you didn't want it called that. You could change the name of it here by clicking on it. When you click here on the left side, it shows you what you're working on here. The very first thing, just real simply, I'm going to go into my income row, and you can see that it's got a header label. It has a total. It's inside the ordinary income expense. It's going to display expanded, and it's going to be by account. What if I change that to class? What if someone doesn't care about the accounts? And this is usually at the executive level. Let's say they want it by department or by class. Now I can say, okay, I want to show it by class instead of by account. And that's the only change I'm going to make, and only to the income statement. Now, if I save that, it'll come up and it changes the drop down below the income then to class. And so what I've done is I've changed it, I've flipped it to say, don't give this to me by account. I want to see it by class instead. There are limitations. So you can go in and replace segments, and you can say, I want to see my expenses by account, but I want to see my revenue by class. I want to add a percentage formula in here. You can go crazy. But if I were to add a new section, if I wanted to add, you call it a financial section, okay? And it says, do you want to use the ones that we've already created? And most of those are set up by account type, or do you want to create a new one? You would say, I want to create a new section. And so now I have a blank slate of what I want to show in this section and how I want to show it. And the reason I bring this up is I wanted to be clear on what your options are, because this is really important. You can filter this section by account name, type, number, class or department, location, customer, item, and sub, and that's it. You can't even use the custom segments, if I remember right, unless they've updated that. Someone asked earlier about, can we do a custom segment to make those columns on the report? You can't create a section using anything but these items, okay? So it is fairly limited. Now, if I did account number, I want to show you this. Here's your choices. You can do it is a certain number, it's empty, it starts with, contains, is not empty, does not start with, or does not contain. Notice there is no range in there, okay? So you can't do a range of account numbers. So the reason I bring this up is because I've done it quite a bit where you use the account number, but you use starts with. So you'll say, on this row, I want to see everything where the account number starts with 56. And then it'll give you, all of those. And you could do a header and summary of that. You could group it by account and show it expanded, or you could just collapse the whole row and it'll just show you that. But I'm not able to show me 56 through 5750. So that tells you that your numbering is important. If you're going to start using these layouts and asking for certain accounts in certain rows, it's best to use the numbering feature and use the begins with. Okay, the rest of these are pretty easy. You know, you can do locations or you can do customers or items, but once you get into account numbers, I just thought it was interesting that it doesn't like it if you try to do a range. So if you number properly, it'll make this report a lot easier for you. You can also then, if I were, for example, I'm going to flip down and go to this, you can, I've done it in class. Look at this class order. I could change the order of how the classes show up on the report by hitting custom or ascending, descending. So you can change the way the report looks. I can change the format of this section. I can reverse the sign if I need to. Sometimes you need to. When you're doing these layouts, you have to reverse the sign. I can make rows bold. I can make the header row different than the total row or the detailed rows on the accounts. So you can go crazy and you can set up some pretty powerful, unique reports that call out exactly the information. What I've seen this most in is doing executive level reporting. We'll do like EBITDA reports and we'll put in our percentages at the bottom. We've pulled in statistical account values in the bottom of the report so we can show, let's say, an income statement by department and then show, oh, and what's my head count by department, so that management can look at that and kind of see, you know, how am I doing? You could add a formula row that then says, what's my cost per head count? And so you can go crazy moving things around. You can delete things on here. If you go to the very bottom to start though, because I'm not going to be able to delete this row until I've deleted everything that's calculated in this row, the net ordinary and net other. So I might go from here and I'll say I want to delete that one. Now I'm going to delete my net ordinary income or my net other. All you have to do is click on that. Now it's going to warn you, it's going to also get rid of these two children that are inside this section. And you can say, okay. Now, once I've created this layout, right now it's called Custom Income Statement Layout 21. See how it's only given me a drop down. Okay, wait. You can change the name right here. Couldn't remember if I did. I'm going to say, call it, oh no, you can't. So I'm going to call it that. You have to pick the layout. Now, once I save that though, let's say I really like this new layout I created. If you go into reports, financial, and then I believe it's at the bottom, reports, financial. Here's your financial row layouts and the assignments. So if I pick up my layout, now I can go find that income statement 21 that I just did, and I can click on it right here, and I can call it my favorite layout. And then, or whatever I want to call it, right? Just by tabbing out of it. Now I can also view the assignments to see which reports use this layout. Well, I only had that one assigned. Brenda, I saw your question. Can you get headcount by department and automatically from the employee list? Yes. What you would do is you would use a saved search that totals counts. Yeah, you got it. Corey's answering you now. That counts the number of employees, and then you can actually set the saved search to fill in the statistical account. And so you can schedule your saved searches to automatically populate your statistical accounts. So we did that, I believe, at a session last year, if you want to look through our recordings, but we did talk about that. Okay, so now I have renamed my layout. So now I could go create a new income statement. Let's say I needed it to be a different time period or something like that. But if I customized it, I can pick the layout to be my favorite layout. And so now I don't have to redo everything I just did on the left side of the report. I can change the columns and the filters for this report, but use the same layout. Okay, we are running out of time. what I'm popping through my notes here just to see, because I did not look at them while we are doing this. I might have missed something. There's a lot more detail in the PowerPoint that I sent out, getting into some of this in more detail. But like I said, in one of our former sessions, we did a whole session on this financial report builder. Okay, any last questions? Sure, you're quite tired of hearing my voice. I know I am. So Corey, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Dana. All right.
There we go.
So real quick, I'm going to post the second keyword, the checkout code. Hang on just a moment. Get to that slide. Okay, there's our checkout keyword for the CPE credits. The checkout code is time. And I'll just leave that up for a minute. And let's see, maybe I'll display the CPE link again just in case. Let me find where I put that. Oops. There's the CPE check in and check out link. Leave it up for just a few more seconds here. Okay, I will stop this and I'll move on to my demonstration of bank recs. So I'm going to do just a quick demonstration. There was a question that came up at our last meeting about how to do a bank rec when you're not importing the data or your transactions from your bank using the new bank rec feature. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, and Dana, make sure you stay on, because if there's any hard bank rec questions, I might need you.
Sure, and I just tried this, so now I can attest that it works.
Yeah, so I'm just going to show a very simple example, and to review real quick, to use the new functionality, I'm going to go to our accounts, and I'll look at the our bank accounts, and I'm going to use this bank rec demo account. And I'll just click on edit that real quick. And for this to work, this has to be checked right here. That will make it so that this account shows up with the new match bank data and reconciliation feature. If this is unchecked, it won't show up in the list of accounts there. So when I go to transactions bank, these two right here, the reconcile bank statement and reconcile credit card statement, those are the old reconciliation methods, and those are deprecated. So they will be gone at some point. So if you haven't switched over to the new system yet, you should start doing it now so that you have plenty of time to work out any kinks in that process. So the new system is going to be a two-part method. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to match the bank data, and then the second part is to reconcile the account statement. So I'm going to click on match bank data. This is where we'll start. And so normally what you would do is you would choose the account. And again, I had this account and I had that box checked, so it's showing up in this drop-down menu. The other bank accounts that don't have it checked are not set here or not shown here. So what you'll notice is that I don't have any transactions to be matched on the left-hand side. That means that I have not imported a statement from the bank into NetSuite. If I had imported it, then all of those transactions would show up here on the left side. There are ways you can upload a file directly from here. You can upload a BAI2, QFX, and I think there's maybe 1 or 2 other file formats that are supported. And you can upload those. There's also an auto import functionality where you can set it up so that NetSuite will connect to your bank and pull in those bank statements on a daily basis, or any new transactions on a daily basis. If you go to upload file, it'll tell you what the formats are. I'm not going to do that right now, but you just click on that and it shows you what formats are available for upload. So the question for this purpose is, how do I use this functionality if I'm not importing my bank data, which is fine, you don't have to do it. So what you'll see here on the right hand side is we have these transactions, and this is just a demo purpose, so there's not very many transactions. But for this purpose, basically what I'm going to do is we're going to reconcile May. And so I'm going to check on this, this one transaction that I'm showing for May. And then if I have any other transactions that I need to add, say, maybe you're looking at your bank statement and there's a charge for, an employee eating lunch out or something, and you need to add that charge, you can click on add charge and you can put that entry in right now, and then it'll show up in this list to be cleared. So what I'll do is I'll check the clear. So this is the step 1. I'll check the clear. There's no other transactions, so I'm done here. I'm going to go to the reconcile account statement section. Oh, sorry, I think we need to hit submit first. And then I'm going to go to the reconcile account statement. And this automatically shows the or sets this to the account that I was already in. And basically we're going to enter our ending statement balance, and the goal is to get this difference to be 0. So you enter your ending statement balance and then you'll hit reconcile when you're done. And that basically is clearing those transactions that you chose in the match bank data page. Now, if you wanted to unclear those transactions, this is where you would do it here. So this is what's going to be reconciled, this review part right here. So let's say one of these was accidentally cleared at some point, you can check on it and then you can undo the clear right there. The account register that Dana was showing earlier, where it has the clear checkbox, if you clear it here, that transaction will not show cleared in the account register, because as she mentioned, that's the old methodology. So here you'll be able to see all of the cleared transactions based on the account. So that's it. It's a really simple process. You start by, on the match bank data page, you choose the transactions that you want to clear. And if I go back here, you'll see that the transaction that I chose earlier is not there anymore. And then you go to the reconcile, you put in your ending statement date, you put in your ending amount, and it should show 0. If it doesn't show 0, then you need to come back to this page and find the transactions that need to be, or that are on that statement that may not have the correct date or something like that. So I am going to post, I have a set of instructions for this. Even though it's pretty simple, I'll also post that on our website afterwards, and then you can review that later on. So that's the tip and trick that we have for today. And let's see, are there any questions?